Somebody on here laughing and trying to tell me that I'm stupid, and I'm an eye for an eye type of woman, so let's get to it. Has made the claim that STDs are parasites that cause their host to be hypersexual to increase their likelihood of transmission. Now, y'all are laughing at this man. Y'all are clowning him. Y'all are saying that's impossible. One man even told me he knows it can't be possible because he is a classically trained researcher. Now, I don't know what that is, but babe, you either got your PhD or you don't. And if you got your PhD, I would beg to ask the question, is your PhD in biology, microbiology, or is it in history? Needless to say, here nor there, I love research, y'all. I'm a research woman. I'm a researcher so much so that I have a kink for industrial size printers. Because when I see them, I start printing off research articles and hoarding them away in my closet. So I do love research. But with that, I'm also a critical thinker. And what I do know, research does not get done unless somebody asks the question. So somebody asks a question, and then they develop a hypothesis, and they take that hypothesis to some department and ask for funding. And if they get the approved funding, then they're able to conduct the research trials. I know I work COVID during the front lines. Y'all know something weird about that? Okay, and I'm gonna go back and we're gonna talk about the STDs. But let me first tell you how research and anecdotal evidence go hand in hand, because we need the anecdotal evidence before we can get to the research. Okay, but I'm gonna give you both. In the pandemic, one thing I noticed early on about my patients is the ones who got on morphine had a high survival rate, if not a complete turnaround. So I didn't have any proof to back up. I looked it up. I couldn't find anything. But what I started doing is going to my doctors and begging them for morphine. I said, please, can I have some morphine for my patient? You know, I think they'll have a better outcome. Most of the time, they wouldn't do it. The first two patients that I had recovered in the unit, in the ward, was because I had literally did what I saw working for them anecdotally long before the research articles came out. So patients get morphine, and some of y'all gonna be like, oh, well, morphine is a bronchodilator, that's why it worked. No, it's not, because we gave them bronchodilators and that didn't work. There was something specific about morphine and its mechanism of action that caused my patients to have complete turnarounds. So getting a doctor to agree with me is very difficult to do, but it might not be difficult to get a spouse to switch their partner over to comfort care and then withdraw it the next day just to get the morphine ordered. So 1.5, maybe 2 years later, guess what comes out? Guess what? Just guess. Guess. A research article that shows that morphine binds to the exact same receptor sites that COVID does. So when morphine is in your body, the COVID virus ain't got nowhere to go and replicate. Ain't that crazy? Because the doctors laughed at me because it was not yet evidence behind it. The doctors laughed at me because we did not have the research at that point in time. But I have zipped up enough body bags to know that when patients get this drug, they don't go in a body bag. So same thing with the vent settings. I noticed, every time y'all put a person's PEEP above this level and drop their tidal volume, they die within 48 hours. So how about don't do that to my patients? How about let's increase the tidal volume on my patients and drop the PEEP? Because I notice everybody with that tends to survive. Now, did the doctors laugh at me when I asked that? They say, yeah, you're a nurse. Even though the vast majority of them were not pulmonologists, they were volunteers. So they didn't know anything about the ventilator either. But because I was a nurse, they was like, no, that whatever, we don't want to do that. We're just going to treat it like ARDS. So guess what happens? Guess what happens? A doctor comes in one day, this lady doctor, and I don't know what it was about her, but I just knew in my soul that I could trust her. And I motioned her to the side and I said, listen, I think that if we increase the tidal volume and drop the PEEP, they'll have a higher survival rate. And she said, you are right. These doctors keep trying to treat this like ARDS, and it's not ARDS. These patients are not responding to that. You're absolutely right. So even though I had the anecdotal evidence that this works, I needed her authority to allow me to change the vent settings. And do you know my patient was scheduled for a terminal extubation. And she lived, y'all. She was intubated and she left her on 2 liters nasal cannula. And this is a subtle flex, because I'm not saying this to be like, oh my God, I'm some massive superhero. I'm saying that there's such a thing as being able to identify basic trends and patterns, making the correlation and adopting them as practices before you have the science to back up why it works. So now let's go back and talk about these STDs. Y'all said that it's impossible for a bacteria to affect the brain. First off, your gut is considered your second brain. It's literally called your second brain in the scientific world. Your gut is responsible for producing serotonin. People say, oh, you need to just work out and eat healthy and you'll feel better and you won't be as depressed. Y'all be getting mad because you want to go get put on medication right away. And it's true. Because your serotonin and a lot of your neurotransmitters, meaning the transmitters that are necessary to regulate your brain, they are produced in the gut. Y'all say, oh, bacteria can't change your behavior. Have you worked in the medical field? Do y'all know what happens to old people when they get a UTI? A 95-pound grandma of 99 years old, when she gets a UTI, develops superhuman strength. She will throw you across the unit. Okay? Superhuman strength. She turns into Mike Tyson. That's what happens. Do people know exactly why? No. But we know if grandma wakes up and starts punching everybody and knocking them out, oh, she got a UTI. They send her to the hospital. They put her on macrobid for 7 days or 14 days, and they bring her back and she's completely normal. So we could give her Ativan shots to help her stay calm, or we could use our anecdotal evidence that says, hey, she probably has a UTI. Get a urinary sample for her. Oh, and behold, look, the white count is through the roof. She must have a UTI. Let's get her on antibiotics, and then what do you know? She's normal in a week. Huh? So you said bacteria can't change human behavior? Okay, so let's go back talking about the parasites. Y'all talking about what STDs are not parasites. They're not, except trichomonas is. Trichomonas is a parasite. It is. Parasites cannot live outside the human body. Why would a parasite alter your behavior? Because that's literally how parasites work. That's how they spread. Now, I learned this in microbiology. That, let's say there is a snail, right? There's a snail. It accidentally eats or consumes a parasite. The parasite then makes the snail go crazy. This parasite goal is to live inside of the host of the snail, right? And make its way into a bird. Therefore, it takes over the snail and makes the snail behave like and look like and camouflage like a worm. And it does that so that birds will swoop down thinking it's a worm, bite off the snail's head, and then the parasite transmits and gets into the bird. So yes, parasites always take over their host because they cannot live outside of a host. You're probably hearing this and thinking like, damn, I know some people like that. Yes. Yes. So yes, that's what they do. So you go and see a snail got his head buried in the ground, down in the dirt, and you're like, that's odd behavior for a snail. Yes, because the parasite has taken over and instructed it to bury its head in the ground so that it can transmit. And it needs to transmit so that it can live, because it cannot live outside of the snail. So yes, parasites cannot live outside the human body. Say this with me again. Parasites cannot live outside of a host. Therefore, they take over their host to ensure their survival. So when this man tells y'all that STDs make y'all hypersexual so they can transmit, even if you don't believe it, even if there's not research to back it up, why is that far-fetched? Syphilis is a bacteria. Have y'all ever met a person with neurosyphilis? They banging everything on the block. Because the syphilis literally gets into their brain and makes them euphoric and makes them hypersexual. It is ensuring its survival. Now, granted, this is end-stage syphilis, but still. Yeah. So, what is a bacteria? What is a parasite? Parasites, bacteria can live on their own. Bacteria are usually unicellular. But parasites can also be unicellular. However, they cannot live on their own. They have a lot in common. If you've ever watched bacteria, because I have a microscope, y'all. When I first ordered my probiotic supplements, my custom formula had it sent over here, I used to put them under a microscope and just watch them play around, because I needed to make sure that my supplements were of high quality and had live bacteria in them. Bacteria will literally have their own communities in your gut. They have their own system. They have their own government. If a bacteria is being lazy and not doing its job in the gut, the other bacteria actually kill it. They eat it. So, is this far-fetched what this man is saying? In due time. There was a time when people got sick, we thought they were overcome by demons. And we might find out at some point that the bacteria is the damn demons. I don't know, because there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. But what I do know is I want to encourage people to continue asking questions and making claims so that we can research them, so we can get funding, so that we can push it forward. If it was a harmful claim, I could see that, but this was not a harmful claim. The man said STDs make people hypersexual to ensure their survival. There's nothing harmful about that claim. What it will do is open the door for research so that we can get the evidence to back up what he's saying. If we don't have it already, I haven't even looked, because it sounds right to me. From what I've seen in healthcare, it sounds right to me.